You've entered the revenge kitchen, where every story has a little salt in the wound. I discovered my wife had spent our children's college fund on her affair the same day she asked me to co-sign for her mother's medical emergency. The emergency was real. The medical bills were not. But let me start from the beginning because the devil, as they say in my profession, is always in the details. My name is Theodore Blackwood, though everyone calls me Theo. I'm 52, and I've spent the better part of 3 decades analyzing financial patterns for a living. Numbers don't lie. They can't manipulate, can't gaslight, can't look you in the eye and tell you that the missing $10,000 was actually spent on surprising you for your anniversary. Numbers are pure, logical, and brutally honest. I wish I could say the same about my wife. Vivienne Castellano became Vivienne Blackwood 14 years ago on a crisp October morning in Greenwich, Connecticut. She was 34 then, with auburn hair that caught the light like fire and a smile that could convince anyone of anything. She had this way of tilting her head when she listened that made you feel like you were the most fascinating person alive. I was 38, already graying at the temples, and absolutely certain I was punching above my weight class. Our house sits on Maple Ridge Drive, a colonial-style monument to suburban achievement with white columns and black shutters that Vivienne insisted on painting annually. "First impressions matter, Theo," she'd say, wielding a paintbrush like a weapon against mediocrity. The interior was her domain, perfectly curated rooms that looked like they belonged in a magazine spread. Every throw pillow had been strategically placed, every color carefully chosen to convey successful family with impeccable taste. Looking back, I should have asked myself why our home felt more like a showroom than a sanctuary. But that's the thing about slow-burning betrayals. They don't announce themselves with fireworks. They whisper their way into your life, one small compromise at a time. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday in March. I was reviewing our monthly bank statements in my home office, a ritual I'd performed religiously for our entire marriage. My office was the one room Vivienne hadn't redesigned, a sanctuary of dark wood and leather that smelled like coffee and quiet concentration. She called it aggressively masculine with a laugh that never quite reached her eyes. There among the usual suspects, grocery stores, gas stations, the kids' school payments, was a charge I didn't recognize. Meridian Design Consultants, $800. "Vive," I called down the hallway, keeping my voice light and curious rather than accusatory. 14 years of marriage had taught me that tone mattered more than content in our conversations. She appeared in my doorway, wearing yoga pants and a fitted top that showed off the body she maintained with religious devotion to Pilates and her personal trainer. At 48, she could still turn heads at the country club, and she knew it. "What's up, babe?" She leaned against the doorframe, casual and composed. "Meridian Design Consultants, 800, ring any bells?" Her expression shifted, not dramatically, just a slight tightening around her eyes that someone less observant might have missed. "Oh, that. I'm working on a surprise for your birthday. Don't look at the charges for the next few weeks, okay?" She moved toward me, placing a hand on my shoulder and kissing the top of my head. Her perfume, something expensive and floral, enveloped me like a familiar lie. "You don't need to spend that kind of money on me, Vive." "I want to. You work so hard and you never spend anything on yourself. Let me spoil you." It was a perfectly reasonable explanation. My birthday was 6 weeks away, and Vivienne had always been generous with gifts, but something in that micro-expression nagged at me. In my profession, I'd learned to trust those nagging feelings. They usually meant someone was trying to hide something. Over the next month, more charges appeared. Meridian Design Consultants seemed to be billing us regularly, sometimes for small amounts, sometimes for several $100s. Each time I mentioned it, Vivienne had a ready explanation. Materials for the surprise, design consultations, installation fees. "Trust me," she'd say with that disarming smile, "you're going to love it." But then came the evening that changed everything. It was a Thursday in April. Vivienne was upstairs giving Sophie, our 16-year-old, grief about her choice of prom dress. Apparently, the neckline was too suggestive for a young lady from a respectable family. Our 13-year-old son Daniel was in his room, probably playing video games and pretending to do homework. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, when Vivienne's phone buzzed on the counter. She'd left it there while she dealt with the prom dress crisis upstairs. The screen lit up with a text message. I wasn't trying to spy. The phone was right there, and the preview was clearly visible. Marcus, can't wait for tomorrow. Same place, same time, I need you so bad. My hand stopped moving. The plate I was holding, one of our good plates, part of the wedding china set that Vivienne had insisted we register for, slipped slightly in my grip. Marcus. I knew a Marcus. Marcus Rivera, the contractor who'd been helping Vivienne with various projects around the house for the past 8 months. He'd installed new fixtures in our guest bathroom, built custom shelving in the basement, and most recently had been working on what Vivienne described as a surprise project in the garage. The same Marcus who sent messages like, "I need you so bad," to my wife. The analytical part of my brain, the part that had served me well in my career, kicked into overdrive. This was data. This was evidence. This required investigation, not emotion. I set the plate down carefully and took a photo of the screen with my own phone. Then I deleted the photo, cleared my camera roll's recently deleted folder, and took the photo again. Evidence Preservation 101. Upstairs, I could hear Vivienne's voice rising. "Sophie, absolutely not. That dress makes you look like you're trying to attract the wrong kind of attention." The irony wasn't lost on me. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat in my office and stared at that screenshot. The timestamp showed 8:47 p.m. The message had come from someone who was clearly intimate with my wife, someone who made plans with her, someone who couldn't wait to see her tomorrow. Tomorrow was Friday. Vivienne had told me she was having lunch with her sister Alina, then going to a new art gallery opening with some friends from the country club. She'd be gone most of the afternoon. I opened my laptop and began what I now think of as my education in digital forensics. Our cell phone plan included family tracking, something we'd set up years ago when the kids started driving. With a few clicks, I could see where Vivienne's phone had been at any given time. The recent history was illuminating. Over the past 3 weeks, her phone had spent considerable time at an address I didn't recognize. 1247 Riverside Court, Unit B according to Google Maps. It was an apartment complex about 15 minutes from our house. More investigation revealed that Marcus Rivera was listed as the primary resident of Unit B. The Meridian Design Consultant's charges suddenly made sense. Marcus was probably billing through that company name, but for what? And why were the amounts so inconsistent? Some charges were small, $50 or $100, others were substantial. The largest, which had appeared just 2 weeks ago, was for $1,500. What kind of design consultation cost $1,500? I spent the next hour creating a spreadsheet. Date, time, location of Vivienne's phone, corresponding charges from Meridian Design Consultants, and any unusual behavior I could remember. The pattern that emerged was as clear as a forensic audit. Every visit to Riverside Court corresponded with a charge from Meridian. The larger amounts coincided with longer visits, and the visits had been getting more frequent. What started as once a week had escalated to 3 or 4 times per week. My wife wasn't planning a surprise for my birthday. She was having an affair, and somehow we were paying for it. But even then, sitting in my office at 2 a.m. with incontrovertible evidence spread across my computer screen, I told myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe Marcus was doing work for other clients, and the billing was getting mixed up. Maybe Vivienne was helping him with his business, and the apartment was his office. Maybe I was paranoid, suspicious, and completely wrong. The next morning, I kissed my wife goodbye and told her to have fun with Alina and the gallery opening. "I will," she said, checking her appearance in the hallway mirror one last time. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, a fitted dress that showed off her figure, heels that made her legs look endless, and perfume applied with the precision of someone who wanted to make an impression. "You look beautiful," I told her because she did. "Thank you, baby, I love you." "I love you too." And that's when I realized that both of us were lying. At 2:30 that afternoon, while sitting in a conference room discussing quarterly projections with my team, I checked the family tracking app. Vivienne's phone was at 1247 Riverside Court. It stayed there for 3 hours. When she came home that evening, she was glowing, energized. She chattered about Alina's new haircut and the absolutely stunning pieces at the gallery opening. She'd bought a small sculpture, nothing expensive, just something that spoke to her. "How was your day?" she asked, the way spouses do when they're not really interested in the answer. Fine numbers, spreadsheets, you know how it is. She kissed my cheek, already moving toward the kitchen to start dinner. I'm thinking of trying that new salmon recipe I found. Does that sound good? Sounds perfect. I watched her move around our kitchen, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 14 years, and felt like I was looking at a stranger. Every gesture seemed calculated, every smile performed. Was this what betrayal looked like? This casual domesticity layered over systematic deception. That weekend, I made a decision that would change everything. I told Vivienne I needed to run some errands, then drove to 1247 Riverside Court. The complex was newer construction, the kind of place where young professionals and divorced dads lived. Unit B was on the second floor, accessed by an external staircase. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:47 a.m., a dark blue Honda Civic pulled into the parking lot. Marcus Rivera got out, mid-30s, well-built from construction work, with the kind of confident swagger that came from knowing you were attractive to women. He jogged up the stairs to Unit B with the easy familiarity of someone coming home. 20 minutes later, a silver BMW sedan pulled into the same lot, my wife's car. Vivienne emerged wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, as if she were trying to avoid being recognized. She looked around nervously before hurrying up the same stairs Marcus had used. I sat in my car for 45 minutes, watching that door and thinking about arithmetic. Specifically, the arithmetic of our marriage. 14 years together, 2 children, a mortgage, joint checking accounts, shared credit cards, vacations to Martha's Vineyard and weekend trips to the city. Birthday parties and anniversary dinners and Christmas mornings where we'd watched our kids tear through wrapping paper while drinking coffee in our matching robes. How much of it had been real? How much had been performance? When Vivienne's car finally left the parking lot at 1:15 p.m., I followed her at a distance. She drove to the mall, spent exactly 45 minutes shopping at Nordstrom, then went to Starbucks where she sat with her laptop for an hour. Building an alibi, I realized. Creating a digital footprint that supported whatever story she planned to tell me. She came home with shopping bags and explanations about finding the perfect pillows for the guest bedroom. She showed me her purchases with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely believed her own lies. That night, while she was in the shower, I checked her phone. The message thread with Marcus revealed a relationship that had been going on for at least 6 months. The early messages were flirtatious, but relatively innocent. Someone who didn't know Vivienne might have dismissed them as harmless banter with a friendly contractor. But the recent messages were explicit, detailed. They made plans that had nothing to do with home improvement and everything to do with adultery. They exchanged photos that I deleted immediately from my phone after confirming what they contained. And woven through the sexual content were discussions about money. Marcus, the invoice for this week is ready, same amount as last time. Vivienne, perfect. Can you make it for bathroom renovation? Theo is getting suspicious about the design consultancy charges. Marcus, no problem. You're worth every penny, baby. She was paying him. My wife was paying her lover for sex, using our joint accounts and disguising the payments as legitimate home improvement expenses. The betrayal was comprehensive. It wasn't just emotional infidelity or even just sexual infidelity. It was financial fraud committed against her own family to fund her affair. I sat on the edge of our bed, listening to the shower run, and felt something inside me calcify. The hurt was still there, sharp and persistent, but it was being joined by something colder and more analytical. Vivienne thought she was smart. She thought she'd covered her tracks, created the perfect system for maintaining her double life while keeping her comfortable marriage intact. But she'd made a crucial miscalculation. She'd tried to defraud a financial analyst. Monday morning, I called in sick and drove to my sister Alina's office in downtown Hartford. Alina Blackwood Martinez was 2 years older than me and possessed the kind of razor-sharp intelligence that made her exceptionally good at finding financial irregularities. As a forensic accountant, she'd built a career on unraveling complex schemes and following money trails that other people thought were untraceable. Her office occupied the entire corner of the 14th floor of a glass tower, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the Connecticut River. Everything about the space communicated competence and discretion, Exactly what someone needed when their world was falling apart. Theo, she looked up from her computer as her assistant showed me in. You look terrible. Thank you, that's exactly what I needed to hear. She studied my face with the same intensity she brought to balance sheets. This is about Vivienne. It wasn't a question. I sat down in one of her client chairs and pulled out my phone. I need to show you something, and I need you to tell me how bad this is. For the next hour, I walked Alina through everything. The phone messages, the location tracking, the pattern of charges from Meridian Design Consultants. She took notes in a leather portfolio, asking clarifying questions with the clinical detachment of someone accustomed to other people's disasters. How much total? She asked when I'd finished. In 6 months, approximately $12,000. That you've found so far. The implication hung between us like a diagnosis. I want you to do a complete audit, I said. Everything, all our accounts, credit cards, investment portfolios. If she's been stealing from us, I want to know the full extent. Alina leaned back in her chair and steepled her fingers, a gesture I recognized from our childhood. She did it when she was thinking through a complex problem. Theo, you understand that this kind of investigation could destroy your marriage. My marriage is already destroyed. I just want to know how much it's going to cost me. She nodded slowly. I'll need access to all your financial records, bank statements, credit card statements, tax returns for the past 5 years, any investment accounts, retirement funds, the kids' college savings plans, everything. Done. And I'll need you to promise me something. Once I start pulling this thread, we're going to follow it wherever it leads. Are you prepared for what we might find? I thought about Vivienne in our kitchen the night before, humming while she made dinner, asking Daniel about his science project with apparently genuine interest. The woman who'd kissed me goodbye that morning and told me she loved me, the same woman who'd spent the afternoon in her lover's apartment. I'm prepared. Okay, give me a week. Alina's findings were worse than I'd anticipated. The affair with Marcus was just the surface layer. Beneath it was a complex web of financial deception that had been growing for at least 2 years. Vivienne had opened 3 credit cards in her name only, using our home address, but having statements sent to a P.O. box I hadn't known existed. The combined balance on these cards was $47,000. She'd also taken a home equity loan against our house for $75,000, forging my signature on the application documents. The money had been deposited into a checking account that only she had access to. But the most devastating discovery was what she'd done to our children's college funds. Sophie and Daniel each had education savings accounts that I'd been contributing to religiously since they were born. Combined, these accounts should have contained approximately $180,000. The current balance was $23,000. She's been making systematic withdrawals, Alina explained, sliding the documentation across her desk. Small amounts at first, then increasingly larger sums. The pattern suggests she was testing to see if you'd notice. I stared at the numbers, feeling like I was looking at the financial skeleton of my own family. The good news, Alina continued, is that she left a detailed paper trail. Every transaction can be tracked and documented. If you decide to pursue legal action, we have everything we need. How much total? Including the college funds, the credit card debt, and the home equity loan she's already spent. Alina's expression was grim. She's stolen approximately $300,000 from your family. $300,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. There's one more thing, Alina said quietly. Based on the spending patterns, I don't think all of this money went to Marcus. She's been funding an entire lifestyle that you weren't aware of. Luxury purchases, travel, expensive restaurants. I found charges for hotels in cities where she claimed to be visiting friends, high-end boutiques where she supposedly was window shopping, spa treatments that cost more than most people's monthly salary. She slid another document across the desk. This is a summary of some of the more significant expenses. The list was staggering. Weekend trips to Boston that I'd never heard about. Jewelry purchases from stores I didn't recognize. Dinners at restaurants that charged more for a meal than we typically spent on groceries in a week. Vivienne hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been living a completely separate life, funded by systematically looting our family's financial security. What do I do? I asked. Elena closed the portfolio and looked at me with the combination of professional competence and sisterly concern that made her so good at her job. First, you protect what's left. I can help you move the remaining assets into accounts she can't access. Then you decide whether you want to handle this privately or involve law enforcement. Law enforcement? Theo, she committed fraud, multiple types of fraud. The forged signature on the home equity loan alone is a felony. If you wanted to press charges, the district attorney would have a very strong case. I drove home that evening thinking about justice versus revenge, about the difference between protecting my family and destroying it. Vivienne was in the kitchen when I walked in, wearing an apron and stirring something that smelled like heaven. Sophie was at the dining room table working on homework, and Daniel was sprawled on the living room floor with his laptop, supposedly researching something for school. This was the life we'd built together. This was what I was trying to decide whether to preserve or demolish. "How was your day?" Vivienne asked, smiling over her shoulder. "Fine numbers, spreadsheets, you know how it is." The words came out automatically, but this time I was the one performing. I didn't confront Vivienne that night, or the next night, or even the next week. Instead, I did something that my professional training had prepared me for perfectly. I observed, documented, and planned. Elena helped me quietly secure our remaining assets. We moved money from joint accounts into individual accounts that Vivienne couldn't access, using legitimate reasons, rebalancing investments, taking advantage of better interest rates, consolidating retirement funds. Everything was legal, documented, and designed to look like routine financial management. Meanwhile, I became a student of my wife's behavior. I noticed things I'd previously dismissed. The way she angled her phone away from me when texting. The new attention she paid to her appearance on days when she claimed to be running errands. The subtle changes in her mood and energy that corresponded with her visits to Riverside Court. But I also noticed something else. Vivienne was getting careless. Her lies were becoming more elaborate and less consistent. She'd tell me she was meeting Elena for lunch, then Elena would call our house that same afternoon. She'd claim to be at the grocery store while her location tracking showed her at Marcus's apartment. The affair was making her sloppy, and sloppiness, in my experience, always led to bigger mistakes. 3 weeks after Elena's audit, Vivienne made the mistake I'd been waiting for. She left her laptop open on our kitchen counter while she went upstairs to shower. I'd been preparing dinner, moving around the kitchen naturally, when I noticed the screen was displaying her email account. I had maybe 20 minutes before she came back downstairs. What I found in her email went beyond the affair, beyond the financial theft, into territory that made my stomach turn. Vivienne wasn't just betraying our marriage, she was planning to leave it. Her recent emails included correspondence with a divorce attorney in Stamford. She'd been quietly gathering information about Connecticut's divorce laws, specifically about asset division and spousal support. One email thread was particularly enlightening. From Vivienne Blackwood to Janet Morrison at Stamford Family Law. Subject: consultation follow-up. Janet, thank you for the consultation last week. Per our discussion, I wanted to confirm my understanding of the key points. 1. Connecticut is an equitable distribution state, so I would be entitled to approximately 50% of all marital assets. 2. Given Theo's income level, I could expect substantial alimony payments for at least 10 years. 3. Primary custody of the children would likely default to me, especially if I can document that Theo works excessive hours. 4. The house would probably need to be sold, but I could petition the court to allow me to remain there until Daniel graduates. I'm moving forward with the timeline we discussed. I should be ready to file within 8-10 weeks. Please prepare the paperwork. V. P.S. You asked about documenting financial assets. I've been keeping careful records of all our accounts, investments, and Theo's income. I should have everything you need. I stared at the screen, feeling like I was reading my own obituary. Vivienne wasn't just stealing from our family. She was planning to destroy it entirely while positioning herself to profit from the destruction. The timeline was especially chilling, 8 to 10 weeks. She was giving herself enough time to extract whatever remaining value she could from our marriage before filing for divorce and claiming half of everything. But there was one thing that Vivienne hadn't counted on. I'd already moved the money. The marital assets she was planning to claim 50% of had been legally transferred into accounts she couldn't touch. The college funds she'd looted had been reported to the authorities. The forged home equity loan had been flagged with our bank. While she'd been planning her exit strategy, I'd been building her prosecution case. I took photos of every relevant email, then cleared the browser history and closed the laptop. Upstairs, I could hear the shower still running. Vivienne was probably taking her time, making sure she looked perfect for whatever story she was planning to tell me about where she'd spent her afternoon. I went to my office and called Elena. "It's time," I said when she answered. "Are you sure?" I thought about the email, about Vivienne's careful timeline, about the 8 to 10 weeks she'd given herself to complete the destruction of our family. "I'm sure. Set the meeting with James Morrison for tomorrow morning." James Morrison was Elena's husband and one of the most respected divorce attorneys in Connecticut. He was also a former prosecutor who understood both family law and criminal fraud. "Theo," Elena said quietly, "once you start this process, there's no going back." There was no going back the moment she decided to steal our children's college money to pay for her affair. The shower upstairs had stopped running. In a few minutes, Vivienne would come downstairs, kiss me hello, and ask about my day. She'd tell me some elaborate story about where she'd been and what she'd done. She'd play the role of loving wife and devoted mother while mentally calculating how much money she could extract from our marriage's corpse. But this time, I wouldn't be playing my usual role as the trusting husband who believed every word. This time, I'd be playing a different role entirely. The meeting with James Morrison took place in his office at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I'd told Vivienne I had an early breakfast with a potential client, which was technically true. James was a client now, and breakfast was involved. James was Elena's physical and professional opposite. Where she was petite and precisely organized, he was tall and rumpled, the kind of man who looked like he'd slept in his suits and lived on coffee and cigarettes. But his reputation for ruthless competence in family court was legendary. "Elena's shown me everything," he said without preamble, gesturing to a thick folder on his desk. "Your wife has committed multiple felonies. The question is whether you want to handle this as a criminal matter, a civil matter, or both." "What's the difference?" "Criminal prosecution would involve the district attorney's office. Your wife could face jail time, but restitution would be separate and might take years. Civil divorce proceedings would be faster for asset recovery, but she'd avoid criminal penalties." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with the calculating expression of someone who'd seen too many marriages explode. "There's also a third option. We document everything, prepare both criminal and civil cases, then offer her a choice. Sign a divorce agreement that gives you full custody and requires her to repay everything she's stolen or face felony charges." She'd never agree to those terms. She would if the alternative was prison. The ruthless pragmatism of it appealed to the analyst in me, but I needed to think about Sophie and Daniel. Whatever happened between Vivienne and me, they'd have to live with the consequences. If she goes to prison, what happens to the kids? You get full custody automatically. They'd know their mother was a convicted felon, but they'd also know why. I thought about Daniel's science project, about Sophie's prom dress crisis, about the thousand small moments of normal family life that Vivienne's choices were about to shatter. "Give me 1 week to decide." "Fair enough, but Theo, you need to understand something. Based on Elena's analysis, your wife is accelerating her timeline. She's planning to file for divorce within the next month. If you're going to act, it has to be soon." I drove to work thinking about timing, strategy, and the difference between justice and revenge. That evening, Vivienne was unusually affectionate. She'd made my favorite dinner, opened a bottle of wine that we'd been saving for a special occasion, and spent the meal asking thoughtful questions about my work. "You seem stressed lately," she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "Is everything okay?" The concern in her voice sounded genuine. If I hadn't read her emails, hadn't seen her location tracking data, hadn't watched her climb the stairs to Marcus's apartment, I might have believed she actually cared. Just the usual stuff. Quarter-end reporting, budget reviews, nothing I can't handle. I worry about you working too hard. Maybe we should plan a vacation, just the two of us. Alina could watch the kids. The suggestion was so breathtakingly hypocritical that I almost laughed. She wanted to plan a vacation funded by money she'd stolen from our children, while simultaneously planning to divorce me and take half of everything we owned. That sounds nice, I said instead. Where were you thinking? Maybe somewhere tropical. We haven't been to the Caribbean in years. She was still holding my hand, running her thumb over my wedding ring with what appeared to be genuine affection. The performance was flawless. After dinner, she suggested we watch a movie together, something we hadn't done in months. We settled on the couch, her head on my shoulder, her hand resting on my chest. "I love you, Theo," she whispered during a quiet scene. "I love you too," I replied, because saying it had become as automatic as breathing. But as I held my wife and felt her warmth against my side, I realized something that should have terrified me. I didn't feel anything at all. The hurt was still there, buried somewhere deep, but the surface had crystallized into something much colder. I was done being the victim in Vivienne's story. It was time to write a different ending. The next morning, I made my decision. I called James Morrison before Vivienne woke up, speaking quietly from my office while the rest of the house slept. "I want to offer her the choice," I said. "Document everything, prepare both cases, then let her decide between prison and agreeing to my terms." "What terms specifically?" "I've been thinking about this all night. Full custody of the children. She keeps her personal belongings and her car, but everything else stays with me. She repays every penny she's stolen on a payment plan if necessary. And she signs a non-disclosure agreement, no trashing me to the kids or our friends." "That's aggressive, but given what she's done, a court would probably support it. When do you want to make the offer?" "Give me until Friday to get the kids settled. I don't want them to witness whatever's going to happen." The next 3 days were surreal. Vivienne continued her performance of devoted wife and mother, while I played my role as the oblivious husband. She helped Daniel with his science project, took Sophie shopping for prom accessories, and cooked elaborate dinners every night. On Thursday, she announced that Marcus would be coming by on Saturday to finish some work in the garage. "The project is almost done," she said with barely contained excitement. "You're going to love the surprise." I nodded and smiled, wondering if she thought I was truly that stupid, or if the lies had become so automatic that she'd started believing them herself. Friday afternoon, I implemented the final phase of my plan. I picked Sophie and Daniel up from school and told them we were going to spend the weekend with Alina and James. Sophie protested. She had plans with friends, but I insisted with the kind of parental authority I rarely exercised. "It's family time," I said. "Your aunt misses you." Alina lived in a sprawling colonial in West Hartford, with enough guest rooms to accommodate visiting relatives and the kind of security system that would make a bank jealous. The kids would be safe there, surrounded by people who loved them when their world imploded. At dinner Friday night, I pulled Sophie aside. "I need to tell you something," I said carefully. "Your mom and I are having some serious problems. Starting this weekend, things are going to change." Sophie was 16, old enough to understand that marriages sometimes failed, even if the details were beyond her comprehension. "Are you getting divorced?" "Probably." She was quiet for a long moment. "Is it because of dad stuff or mom stuff?" The question caught me off guard. Sophie was more observant than I'd given her credit for. "It's because of choices your mom made, choices that hurt our family." "Okay," she nodded with the resigned acceptance of someone who'd been expecting bad news. "Will we still get to live in the house?" "Yes, and you'll still go to the same school, see the same friends, keep the same life as much as possible." "What about Daniel?" "Daniel will be fine too. We're going to make sure both of you are okay." Saturday morning, while the kids were still sleeping, I drove home to end my marriage. I arrived at the house at 9 a.m. Vivienne was in the kitchen, dressed in workout clothes that looked more appropriate for a fashion shoot than actual exercise. She was drinking coffee and scrolling through her phone, probably coordinating her afternoon rendezvous with Marcus. "You're up early," she said without looking up. "Couldn't sleep." She made sympathetic noises while typing on her phone. The kids okay at Alina's? They're fine. Marcus's truck pulled into our driveway at 10:30 a.m., right on schedule. I watched from the living room window as he got out, grabbed a toolbox from the back, and walked toward our front door with the confident stride of a man who believed he was in control of the situation. Vivienne let him in, and their greeting was carefully neutral, a handshake, professional small talk about the weather. If I hadn't read their text messages, I might have believed they barely knew each other. Theo's home, she told him, so we should probably focus on the project. No problem. Let me show you both what I've been working on. They led me through the kitchen to the garage, where Marcus had indeed been working on a project. He'd built custom shelving along one wall, with specific dimensions for storing golf clubs, seasonal decorations, and household supplies. It was quality work, organized, functional, and exactly the kind of thing a devoted wife might arrange as a surprise for her husband. This is incredible, I said because it was. Vivienne, this must have cost a fortune. She beamed with what looked like genuine pride. You're always complaining about the garage being disorganized. I thought this would help. Marcus walked us through the features: adjustable shelves, built-in lighting, a workbench with integrated storage. He quoted prices for the materials and labor that almost matched what I'd seen charged to our accounts. For a moment, I wondered if I'd been wrong about everything. Maybe the afternoon visits to Riverside Court had innocent explanations. Maybe the intimate text messages were taken out of context. Maybe I'd constructed an elaborate conspiracy out of circumstantial evidence and paranoid jealousy. Then Marcus's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with the automatic reflex of someone expecting important communication. Sorry, he said, typing a quick response. My girlfriend's been texting all morning. The word girlfriend hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Vivienne's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, confusion, and then a flash of something that looked like rage before settling into carefully controlled neutrality. Girlfriend? She asked with the tone of someone making polite conversation. Yeah, we've been together about 8 months now. She's great, works in interior design, actually. Real classy lady. I watched my wife process this information. Marcus had apparently had a girlfriend the entire time he was having an affair with Vivienne. In his mind, Vivienne wasn't his lover. She was a client who paid him for sex. That's nice, Vivienne managed. Interior design, you said? Yeah, she's got her own business and everything. Meridian Design Consultants, real professional operation. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Marcus's girlfriend was the front for the billing scheme. Vivienne was paying for sex through a fake design company run by her lover's actual girlfriend, who probably had no idea what services were really being provided. It was so absurd, so perfectly dysfunctional that I almost felt sorry for Vivienne. Almost. Well, I said, this is all fascinating, but I think we need to discuss payment. Marcus quoted his final invoice, $800 for the completion of the project. Exactly what I'd expected based on the pattern of previous charges. I'll write you a check, Vivienne said quickly. Actually, I said, I'll handle this one. I pulled out my checkbook and wrote Marcus a check for the full amount, then tore it out and handed it to him with a smile. Thanks for all your hard work, I said. The garage looks amazing. Marcus left 10 minutes later, probably confused by the sudden shift in dynamics, but happy to be paid. Vivienne and I stood in our newly organized garage, surrounded by the evidence of her elaborate deception, and I waited to see what she would say. The shelving really does look good, she offered. Yes, it does. I'm glad you're happy with it. I'm happy with a lot of things lately. Something in my tone made her look at me more carefully. For the first time in months, I saw uncertainty in her expression. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots I'd been collecting. Text messages, location data, bank statements, emails. The complete documentary record of her double life. I mean, I'm happy to finally understand what's been happening in my own marriage. I handed her the phone. Vivienne stared at the screen for a long time, scrolling through the evidence with the concentration of someone reading her own indictment. Her face went through the same progression of expressions I'd seen when Marcus mentioned his girlfriend. Surprise, confusion, rage, and finally, resignation. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Long enough to protect our children's future from whatever you were planning to do to it." She looked up from the phone. "What do you mean?" "I mean I know about the divorce attorney. I know about your timeline. I know about the college funds you stole and the credit cards you opened and the home equity loan you forged my signature on." With each revelation, she seemed to shrink a little more. "I know about everything, Vivienne." She handed me back the phone and walked to the workbench Marcus had built, running her hands over the smooth surface. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now you get to make a choice." I led Vivienne back into the house, to the dining room where we'd shared thousands of meals, and helped our children with homework and made plans for a future that no longer existed. On the table was a manila envelope that James Morrison had prepared. "What's this?" Vivienne asked. "Your options." She opened the envelope and pulled out 2 sets of documents. The first was a divorce agreement that gave me full custody of the children, allowed her to keep her personal belongings and car, but awarded her nothing else from our marital assets. The second was a detailed criminal complaint documenting every fraudulent transaction she'd made, ready to be filed with the district attorney's office. "You can sign the divorce agreement," I said, "and we handle this privately. The children don't have to know the details of why our marriage ended. You get to maintain some dignity and avoid prison." She was reading through the documents with the focused intensity of someone whose life was collapsing in real time. "Or," she asked, "or I file the criminal complaint on Monday morning and you face felony fraud charges. Either way, our marriage is over. The only question is whether you want to end it as a divorced woman or a convicted felon." Vivienne set the papers down and looked around our dining room, at the crystal chandelier she'd insisted on buying, at the antique sideboard that had belonged to her grandmother, at the family photos chronicling 14 years of apparently happy marriage. "You've thought of everything," she said. "I'm a financial analyst. I think of everything. The kids. The kids will be fine. They'll live with me in this house, going to their same schools. You can have supervised visitation until you prove you're trustworthy again." Supervised visitation. The words came out like a slap. "Vivienne, you stole your own children's college money to pay for sex. I'm not leaving them alone with you until I know you won't hurt them again." She was quiet for a long time, staring at the documents that would determine the rest of her life. "How much time do I have to decide?" "You have until Monday morning. That's when I'm either filing this divorce agreement or calling the district attorney. And if I sign the divorce papers, then you pack whatever personal belongings you want to keep and you find somewhere else to live. You'll have 30 days to get settled, then we'll establish a visitation schedule for the kids." "What about money? How am I supposed to live?" The question was so breathtakingly selfish that I had to pause before answering. "You'll live the same way most divorced people live. You'll get a job and support yourself. You might want to start by paying back the $300,000 you stole from your family." She looked up sharply. 300,000. Elena did a complete audit. Every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature, every penny you embezzled from our joint accounts. It's all documented. Vivienne stood up abruptly and began pacing around the dining room, her hands shaking slightly. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said. "What did you mean for it to be?" "I don't know, a distraction, something exciting. Marcus was. He made me feel alive again. So alive that you were willing to destroy your children's futures to keep him interested." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Vivienne? Explain to me how stealing Sophie's college money was about feeling alive." She stopped pacing and turned to face me, and for a moment I saw something that looked like genuine remorse. "I don't know," she said quietly. "I don't know how I became this person." "You became this person one choice at a time. Every lie, every forged signature, every secret credit card. You chose this." The conversation was interrupted by my phone buzzing with a text message from Elena. "Kids are asking when they can come home. What should I tell them?" I showed Vivienne the message. "They want to come home. What should I tell them about why mommy's suitcases are packed?" "You're really going to do this?" "I'm really going to do this." She picked up the divorce agreement and read through it again, more slowly this time. If I sign this, do the kids ever have to know about everything else? If you sign this, we tell them that we grew apart and decided we'd be happier living separately. They don't have to know about Marcus, or the money, or any of the rest of it. Not unless you force my hand by refusing to cooperate. And if I don't sign, then they find out their mother is a convicted felon when it shows up in the newspaper. The brutality of the choice was intentional. Vivienne had created this situation with her lies and theft. Now she could choose between humiliation and incarceration. She signed the papers at 4:17 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon in March, sitting at our dining room table with tears streaming down her face. 6 months later, I was sitting in my office on a Tuesday evening, reviewing quarterly reports, when Sophie knocked on the door. "Dad, can we talk?" She was 17 now, preparing for her senior year of high school, and she'd handled the divorce with the resilience that continually amazed me. Daniel had struggled more initially, but both kids seemed to be adapting to our new normal. "Of course, what's up?" She sat down in the chair across from my desk, the same chair where I'd first started planning Vivienne's downfall. "I know," she said. "Know what?" "About Mom, about what she did." My stomach dropped. "Sophie." "I'm not stupid, Dad. A marriage doesn't just end because people grew apart. And Mom doesn't just suddenly move into a studio apartment and start working at a department store because she wants a simpler life." I closed the laptop and gave her my full attention. "How much do you know?" "I know she was stealing from us. I know she was cheating on you. I know you could have had her arrested but didn't because you were protecting me and Daniel." The matter-of-fact way she recited the facts told me she'd been thinking about this for a while. "Are you angry?" "At her, yeah, at you, no." She leaned forward. "I'm proud of you." "Proud?" "You could have been vindictive. You could have destroyed her completely. But you found a way to get justice without destroying our family." I thought about that word, justice. Was that what I'd achieved? Vivienne was working retail, living in a one-bedroom apartment, and making payments toward the debt she owed our family. Marcus had moved on to other clients, and probably other married women willing to pay for his services. His girlfriend's design company had mysteriously folded after losing their largest client. Elena had helped me restructure our finances, and the kids' college funds had been restored. Sophie would start at Yale in the fall, and Daniel's future was secure. "Do you think I did the right thing?" I asked. Sophie considered the question with the seriousness she brought to everything these days. "I think you did the only thing that protected us," she said finally, "and I think Mom got exactly what she deserved." That night after the kids had gone to bed, I sat in my office and thought about the mathematics of marriage, betrayal, and justice. In the end, the numbers had told the story. $300,000 stolen, 14 years of marriage reduced to a stack of legal documents, 2 children who would grow up knowing that actions have consequences. Vivienne had calculated wrong. She'd assumed I would remain passive, that her lies were more sophisticated than my ability to detect them, that her betrayal could continue indefinitely without consequences. She'd forgotten that I was a financial analyst, that I specialized in finding patterns others missed, in following money trails others couldn't trace, in seeing the truth hidden behind carefully constructed facades. She'd tried to defraud an expert. The mistake had cost her everything. I opened my laptop and returned to the quarterly reports, finding comfort in the honest brutality of numbers that could never lie, never manipulate, and never break your heart. Outside my office window, the suburban landscape of Maple Ridge Drive stretched into the darkness. Dozens of houses hiding dozens of secrets. Dozens of marriages built on foundations that might crumble at any moment. But my house was different now. My house had been stripped down to its mathematical foundation, and that foundation was solid. The truth, however painful, was always more reliable than the most beautiful lie. And in the end, the numbers always won. Revenge or redemption? How do you see it? Comment your view, like the video, and make sure to subscribe so the next powerful story lands right on your screen.